Good.
They got internet challenge.
I'd like to call to order Richmond City School Board meeting for Monday, June 1st, 2015. Madam Clerk.
Will the board members who are present please respond? Mr. Sturtevant? Ms. Gray? Mr. Bourne?
Here.
Mrs. Morrison? Mrs. Taylor? Mrs. Harris Muhammad? Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Dr. Jones? Mrs. Pinckney? Mr. Chair, you do have a form, and let the record reflect that you've also been joined by your student, Mr. Kylie Banks. Dr. Davis, would you like to introduce?
Good evening, board members. I actually have two people to introduce to you. The first is Kaim Banks, the student member for this month. Kaim Banks is a senior at John Marshall High School. And John Marshall, of course, another accomplishment that he has contributed to, was ranked in the top third of high schools in the entire United States out of 21,000 high schools by U.S. News and World Report. So thank you for helping your school to that accomplishment. He is a member of the National Honor Society. He was a varsity football captain, a Future Business Leaders of America, and Men on a Mission Male Mentoring Program. That's a lot of M's. He served as a community tutor at Ann Hardy Community Center. He has volunteered and participated in projects such as Breast Cancer Awareness Walk, 5th Street Baptist Church Campus Beautification, and the Redskins Thanksgiving Food Basket Drive. Kaim desires to attend, I think it's already a done deal, to attend Old Dominion University, and he wants to major in electrical engineering. He is currently ranked number 1 in his senior class and has a cumulative GPA of 4.46. The other person I need to bring to your attention is today you received the notification. This is the first day of the new Director of Communications. I'd like to introduce to the board members Mr. Richard Davis III, who's just arrived to us from Minneapolis Public Schools, which has about 36,000 students. Mr. Davis has over 10 years experience in both private sector and working with public schools. He has a bachelor's from the University of Alabama, a master's in business MBA from University of Minnesota School of Management. I can't think of the name of the school. And then a Juris Doctorate from that other school in Florida, Florida State University. I'd like to introduce you Mr. Richard Davis III.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Thank you for having me here this evening. Look forward to working with you all and meeting you one-on-one at a later time, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Bourne.
Might I ask Mr. Davis whether or not he would hold it against any of us if we, at random times, yelled War Eagle?
We all make mistakes in life, sir. I won't hold that again.
Okay. And we won't hold the fact that you're a lawyer against you.
Duly noted. No objection here.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear you. What did you say?
Which part? I'm just
It's all good. All right, Madam Clerk.
We do have some amendments to the agenda this evening, Mr. Chair. Item 5.06 reads to receive for action, and it is just information only. There are no actions on budget transfers this evening.
Okay.
And I received a request to remove item 4.04, receive an update on conferences attended. That's going to be deferred. Those are the only changes I have.
Second.
Move in second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The agenda has been adopted as amended. The next item is item 2, public information. I don't have anyone who signed up in advance. What is your pleasure?
Anyone who would like to address the board tonight, you would line up to my right, to the aisle to my right. Okay, once again, is anyone else who would like to address the board tonight? Line up to my right. Okay, thank you. Groups will have 5 minutes, individuals 3. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Danny, Chairman Coleman, Vice Chair Ms. Larson, and members of the school board. My name is Joanne Henry, and I am the founder and the director of Dream Academy, a nonprofit high school for adults. Our school is the first Virginia-based alternative school of its kind. Since 2012, our school has given adults a second chance, about 60 adults. As you may know, last October, Dr. Bedden signed a memorandum of understanding that allowed Dream Academy to buy diplomas with the RPS seal toward our graduates. Our requirement is to use a curriculum that meets the Virginia State standards of learning. We also are to allow Dr. Bedden or his designee to ensure that we are using such a curriculum. First, our school leadership meets the requirements and our curriculum meets the state standards. We also meet the state standards. We contract with Edgenuity, a producer of online instruction, which has been approved by the state. This is an online program similar to the online program used at the Performance Learning Center. Henrico, Chesterfield, and Hanover counties also use Edgenuity. Our student must pass the courses in the 4 subjects of reading, writing, science, math, and social studies as required by the state. After our students pass the Edgenuity exam, we do what the state requires, have our students take an additional state-approved test. Based on a discussion with the state, we use the advanced TAVE test, or the test of adult basic education. The TAVE test is described as the most comprehensive and reliable academic assessment product for adult basic education. Virginia used to use this TAVE test in public schools before the SOLs. TAVE test is still used in public schools for adult education. I am happy to report that each of our students not only completed Edgenuity courses they were required to take, but also 23 passed the TAVE test with flying colors. Their results show they met or exceeded 12th grade standards. The results also projected that if they had taken the SOL test, they would have passed, or if they had taken the GED, they would have passed. I have some folders that I would like to pass out to you so you can review these. Our school has a required leadership I hold a master's and a doctorate degree in education, and I'm certified by the State Department of Education as a district superintendent. Our guidance counselor is state certified. The teachers who provide the online instruction for Edgenuity are us also. Unfortunately, a problem cropped up after we delivered the results of the Edgenuity and TABE test for each student to purchase the diplomas for each student. Dr. Michelle Boyd, Dr. Betty's designee, required Dream Academy to bring a representative of the State Department of Education to meet with her to tell her that our school meets the guidelines for an alternative school. However, Dr. Michael Nussbaum, the Virginia Department of Education Director of Education and Literacy, suggested that Dr. Boyd review the guidelines online, and I faxed her a copy of the state guidelines for the basic adult program to her office. This has stalemated our graduates. Our school wants to order diplomas for them, but RPS has declined to order them. I don't know what to do. Our next graduation is set for June the 20th. I am hoping that this can be resolved with the assistance of the board. The handouts I am providing you show that each student not only passed the Edgenuity test, but really learn based on the TABE test results. They deserve to receive their diplomas. Dream Academy is not only a diploma mill, our school is simply another option for adults to finally gain a diploma. The GED is the only option RPS has now provided for adults, and only a fraction of the students who enter the program can pass the test. I am asking for your assistance to allow us to move forward.
30 seconds.
I am hoping that you, the board, will see that we have done our part and that RPS needs to do its part by providing the diplomas as agreed in the MOU. I am hoping RPS will agree that Dream Academy is a beneficial program, and I look forward to some assistance. Thank you very much.
Good evening, School Board Chair Coleman, Vice Chair Larson, Superintendent Benton, and all other members of the school board. My name is Charlotte Herron. I'm president of the Richmond Education Association. Tonight, I'd like to share some concerns with you. The reconstitution of MLK has been a source of great disappointment for the staff and students. There has to be a better way to do what needs to be done that does not cause for disruption for the students or mistrust from employees. The employees should not be handled as non-renewals because it is not a non-renewal. Employees should not be pressured into resignations on the spot or the same day as a phone call. If the plan was to change administration, the staff should have been told when they asked you. Some of them made their decisions based on the answer to that question. Employees should not ever be made to feel that they have been lied to or mistreated or unfairly treated by the division. Concerns are still being related to me about HR. Calls are not being answered or responded to, and neither are emails. Our 9.5-month employees have been putting their summer on hold for some time now, waiting for some resolution to our problem. Should they be held accountable for planning their summer already while they get cheaper prices and better deals because they could not see a salary increase coming? I can tell you now and share with you now that those employees are not going to be happy with the results of the outcome. I stand and speak for them for those who will not speak for themselves. I've gotten emails just this week to ask me to share with you to postpone doing this until next year because plans have already been made. I know that they are not going to be happy once they see the new salary scale because, as we know, you voted to only accommodate them for the 3 additional days that they're going to be working. So they're going to want to know why they could not get a true raise. As much as we think things have changed, they really have not. When you know better, you must do better. Who will want to come to RPS, and how will we fill the vacancies? We will only be able to get the leftovers from the other school divisions. There is much work that needs to be done and limited resources to be used for this work. We are a division with many needs, and our children don't have anywhere else or anyone else to depend on or trust in to do the best for them. You have some difficult decisions and hard choices to make. I implore you to keep our children and employees in the forefront of all of your choices. Our children deserve nothing less than the best. Our employees deserve nothing less than the best. It is time to put all of our kids first. It's time to change the conversation. It's time to do some repair. Build bridges, not tear them down. It's time to treat everyone as if they are a human being. Thank you.
Good evening, school board members. I'm Lisa Hicks from Outreach Involvement Center, and this is Scotty Wood from Outreach Involvement Center. I'm here again. Just want to make it known that Outreach Involvement Center is still looking for support to support our suspension to intervention program. We've been working on this program since February of last year. I have then met with Dr. Benton, Dr. Kane, and a couple other school board members. I was told to continue working with the students that I had in place already, and I have done so throughout the whole school year. I have 2 students that were allowed to go back to school once their expulsions was up. They're back in school. One is back in school doing well, and one just couldn't handle the ratio of the students in the classroom. She had been with us 180 days with the ratio being 5 to 1 instructor. She had other issues as far as having to be able to be around more students at one time. So she's getting home instructed at home. I now have 3 students still left with me, and they're doing very well. They're still using the Edgenuity online curriculum and also classroom times with our instructors. Since I was told to continue with the students that I have invested all of my savings into this program because I didn't want to stop on the progress of the students that I've had in my care. These students now will be coming back again if afforded the opportunity of some support from the Richmond Public Schools to follow with us on this upcoming fall. The students that I have are not allowed back in school until 2016, and I would hate all the hard work that we have put into these students be thrown away because simply there's no support financially to help them. They have breakfast, lunch. The parents do their 5 hours support time with the students during the day. With our program, each parent must spend 5 hours without those 30 days to show that they're supporting their student. It's not a dumping ground for students just to come because they have did some kind of punishment where they deserve to be out of school until it's rectified for them to go back. But the students that I have, they came to me with referrals, biting, cuss you out, will tear your property up. I have not experienced any of that with the students that I have. And I think simply it's because they're in a different environment. They're still getting the learning that they need, and they're still going on field trips. The support that I'm doing with them as far as breakfast and lunch and school supplies, at times it is donated, sometimes it is in kind. We did our fundraiser dinner just to let the community know and be aware of what we're doing over at 1618, and I still yet have the support financially that I need. I sent over MOU. I was told back in August that they will accept the MOU to send it over. I did that, and then within a week or so I was told that they couldn't go through with the MOU. I've talked to Ms. Boyd since then, who told me to flush out the MOU and send it back. I sent it back. I'm kind of like going back and forth. I'm putting a lot of effort into trying to get this program established for the students that have no other place to go. The juvenile justice system, the students are coming to me with referrals from there, and I cannot take anymore because of the financial side of it. But working with Southside Community Housing Development, they have partnered with me to support us in this program as far as helping the kids find employment. So we together put together a work-study program so the students that are afforded to come to Albert Involvement Center also have an opportunity for employment. So far, we have placed 2 students with J&W Moving Service, which is a company that's been around for about 20 years, into employment. They're with us Monday through Wednesday, and they go to work on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The reason why I thought about the work-study program with the Edgenuity or with the curriculum that we have is simply because they want to work. And I had to come up with some type of incentive to offer them the program, to continue with the program, and also work. The deals that I make with the contractors that employ our kids is that if they stop the program, then they stop working. So I'm here. I think I've exhausted all my resources on trying to get a help for the program. That didn't stop me from still trying and still coming out of my pocket to help. But I'm here today because I need more help. We're going to have more students that's getting suspended or expelled from school. And with that, I'm asking for the school board support again. Scotty wanted to say a few things as well.
30 seconds.
Good evening, school board members. I just want to state the fact that the program that is before you, you all are aware of it and what it's designed to do, but the program will never reach its full potential unless it's able to be funded so we can get the most out of it. You know, right now, we're just unable to do the things that we would like to do without proper funding. So in order for this to reach its full potential and continue to grow, we need y'all support. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Is there anyone else? Anyone else that would like to address the board tonight? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, before we move to the next item, let the record reflect you've been joined by Ms. Taylor, Mrs. Pinckney, and Ms. Gray. The next item is item 3, recognitions. Mr. Miles.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Superintendent, school board members. I am proud to be here today because Richmond Public Schools have done some great things. And sometimes we don't hear all the great things, but today I want to talk about something that the state had an opportunity to vote on our students on our contest for poster board. As you walked in, you've seen 4 different posters of our students who the theme this year was bullying in the school. And they drew up pictures of how not having bullying on the school bus. We won first, second, and third prize. Wow. I'm very proud. In that process, throughout the districts across this state, they were voted on, and our students across the state, it also will be posted at our conference. Also, the nationally have an opportunity to win it national. First place is $100. Second place is $75, and third place is $50. So at this time, I'm going to have Ms. Reynolds to call the students so that we can recognize them and thank them for the great artwork. I mean, we have a 2-year-old. When I was 2-year-old, I was drawing a stick. And so, I'm in second grade, I'm sorry. Second grade. I said a 2-year-old. Second grade. I was drawing a stick and some hands. These students are actually drawing out figures. I'm just so proud of them. And Richmond hadn't been in this competition in years. We can't even go back to find out how long they have not been in. And I want to thank our public relations department. Ms. Lovelace, she did an excellent job of keeping it before the teachers and the staff through her public relations stuff.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I would like to announce the first place winner and ask that the family and the principal and the student, Patad Ahmed, J.B. Fisher Elementary, 2nd grade. First place, $100. The parents and the principal. Second place, Elkhart Middle School, Kevin Gales, 7th grade. Parents and principals. Third place, Linwood Holton, Evie Allman. We have a second, third place winner, Katura McDaniel, Lucille Brown, 6th grade.
The poster drawings will go to the school for the first year to be posted in the school. Then after that, it will come to transportation, and we're going to find a wall to put them on. And as we grow, that you can come through transportation to be able to see the great work our students do. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk.
The next item is item 4, your items for academic improvement. 4.01, receive the Student Code of Ethics and Responsibilities.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, Dr. Benton, school board members. This evening, I'll give you a brief overview of the score. You have been presented the score information in your packet, I believe in the last week or so. And at this time, rather than go through it step by step, I'd like to take any questions that you might have at this time.
Mr. Morgan, I really regret that I didn't have an opportunity to work with the committee this year as you all went back through the score. I was just wondering whether or not the committee intends to expand the work that you do to maybe, now that we've created this new document and you all have made some enhancements, to consider what impact it's having. Are we looking backwards at our discipline for the year to find out, are people adhering to the score, to really kind of see what value does it have?
Right. I guess the best answer for that now is certainly, open, and we value your input. You've been on the committee before, so that's something that in the future we definitely can take a look at. This year we have not compared any data as of yet to see if there's been a reduction in discipline infractions, but that's something we certainly take a look at.
Thank you.
Mrs. Muhammad.
Did you all have any parents or students on the committee to review the score?
We did not have any parents or students as for this year, simply because we had so many minor changes to make. There weren't any major changes for the document. Usually we do have a parent and also a student that takes place, but this year we had so few changes and we did not do that, no.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Any changes to the cell phone policy?
No changes to the cell phone policy at this time.
So it's current but out of sight. I mean, not current, on person but out of sight. What is?
That's correct. It's still the same as it was last year. You're allowed to have the cell phone during the day as long as it's not interrupting instruction, that it's out of sight, because if it's in sight, the staff member has the right to say to remove it, put it away where it'll be confiscated.
One last follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Do we have a policy that speaks directly to students who video instances in the building? For example, there is a fight in the cafeteria and we have students videotaping the fight, and then it's now on Facebook and YouTube.
Right. Now, that is currently in the Student Code of Conduct. We did try to flesh it out a little bit more this year by adding some verbiage
to make it clear to not only to our students but parents as well that the consequences of that could be, really substantial if the students chose to videotape a student or a staff member, especially, as you said, during confrontation.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Moore? Okay, Ms. Taylor?
Do you have any change verbiage for the dress code policy?
No, that did not change anything about the dress code policy. It is as it was last year as well.
What about enforcement of said policy?
Well, again, that's a building level determination as far as the determination is how far each administrator wants to look at any individual example. I don't want to say that, for example, that's been any change that we've had in the past.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
The next item is 4.02, discuss the division-wide process for school uniforms.
All right. Does anyone have any questions on this? Because Ms. Lilly had forwarded us all of the information about our policy around the school uniforms and what we discussed and what the state says about it. So, Ms. Muhammad.
I would like for the attorney to just give a quick summary of the information that she forwarded to us, because everyone is not pertinent to that information, and then the superintendent speaking to just a process in terms of, the length of time, what should happen, any data collection from any other school districts that possibly is in or has the current practice with school uniforms, and then if time permits, speak to the elementary level versus the secondary level, because I think we have some elementary schools that have opted into the uniform process, such as JEB Stewart. I know when my daughter was attending JEB Stewart, they had uniforms Monday, Wednesday, and I think Friday. I'm not sure if that's the current, practice, but that seemed to work well, but it wasn't a school board policy. It was something that the board at that time supported the principal in doing because of the high poverty level that was filtering into JEB Stewart at that time. So if you all can go in that order, that would be great.
Ms. Lilly?
Thank you. Basically, what I provided to the board members was just a cover memo with 3 attachments. First was the Virginia Code 22.1-79.2, Uniforms in Public School Board of Education Guidelines. And basically, this is the law, which outlines the fact that the Board of Education will develop model guidelines for local school boards to rely on when they are considering whether to establish requirements for students to wear uniforms. I'll note that this was enacted in 1995, and the law has not changed to date. And following that document were the guidelines that the Board of Education developed in response to this particular law. And the guidelines, the basic framework of the guidelines has not changed with respect to the Board of Education encouraging parent and community involvement. There's also an aspect of legal considerations regarding issues surrounding free speech, cost of procurement regarding the financial arrangements, because as you'll note in the law, state funds cannot be used to purchase uniforms, so considerations have to be given in that regard. The final document was a federal document, Manual on School Uniforms, that was published by the United States Department of Education, again outlining the considerations for school uniform programs and just a user's guide to adopting the school uniform policies if they so choose.
Thank you, Ms. Lilly. Dr. Ben?
Board members, Ms. Lilly has pretty much covered everything, and as articulated at the last meeting when this came up, the biggest part is that we can't do anything financially to support it. Thus, we go back to it really needs to be a school-based led initiative if it's something they want to do, because it's going to require some type of funding support that the central office or the district does not want to create that burden. As far as surveying, if you look on page 12, I believe, this policy that came down from the board, state board, actually had the districts that were surveyed, and actually Westover Hills was one of them that was included. So we actually had, and they had districts outside in other states. Again, we would highly recommend that if a school is interested and that is something they want to happen, then we would provide support with adhering to and following the model process that was given by the state board to pursue considering school uniforms. There is typically a dialogue about school uniforms, the pros and cons of it. One is about having more influence and control over student dress with regards to, some parents will tell you that it limits the frustration, choice of what to put on and what not to put on. I've been in both. Not my daughter's current school, but her last school had khakis and a blue shirt. Whether it was light blue, royal blue, but it was a polo style shirt. The school had a direct relationship with a vendor to control the cost, to support parents, so the cost did not become an issue, and then had to work to develop support mechanisms for those parents who had financial challenges, which was often an initiative of the PTA. While serving as a regional superintendent in Philly, we actually had uniforms all the way K through 12, all the way through the high school. Anecdotally, that's when we had a conflict between two high schools, that's how we could tell who they were before we got there, quite often. But it typically is a community-based and oftentimes a school-based and their surrounding community initiative that then the district comes in and supports through the process, which would be the case here because Virginia has adopted very strict, spelled out guidelines for us to have uniforms in place.
Thank you, Dr. Benton. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. I guess it's something that I have been very passionate about since the beginning of our tenure together. I really would like this board to consider moving forward with the process of scheduling public hearings to get input from our community members. I too have 3 children who have matriculated through RPS, and when they were in elementary school, Westover Hills was their school, zone school, and they had uniforms there. And to me personally, it was far more cost effective for me to buy a pair of khaki pants or a skirt and a shirt than it is to buy jeans at $29 to $36 a piece. And whether it's uniforms or general casual wear, the state doesn't fund it either way. So I would really like to move forward and see how we can start this process. Thank you.
Ms. Epps?
Dr. Ben, can you shed a little clarity on, for instance, are the teachers, not the teachers, but are the principals currently aware that this is an option that they have? And is there a time frame, like should they start the discussion now if in the event come September they wanted to institute an optional dress code, a uniform?
I couldn't answer that because I haven't asked them. I would tell you that some are, but I couldn't say all because we have some schools that haven't. One of the things that I would point out to you is that as far as the time schedule, the recommendation in the book is a 1 to 2 year planning process. So I would not tell you that this is something that you would think that would happen from the start of next school year. If it's something that principals are interested in, they would probably at minimum need to go through next year in the planning process and looking for the following year. Because it is recommended that a 1 to 2 year planning and input period be provided for implementing any policy, thus permitting the opportunities for community involvement and survey of students, parents, school staff, and other appropriate persons regarding the uniform policy. Additionally, it also lays out the following suggestions. Establish a parent uniform committee in the target school. So the school should have the committee, not something that we run from central office. Again, we would support them and assist them in putting these structures in place with a contact people designated and telephone numbers. Cooperate in development of a parent survey. So one of the things, for instance, we would do is support them, could support them in our surveying capacity with K-12 Insight. But everything, again, points to the way it's written, school-based, school-led. Now, we're more than happy to send everybody a copy of this and make them aware to cover the bases, if that's what you like, but I'm not going out and said it. Again, some of our schools have it. Ms. Muhammad mentioned one, we have Westover Hills, so but you get turnover, so it doesn't mean that everyone is aware of it. But I'm more than happy to send out the guidelines and cover bases and make persons aware.
Fantastic. Just a follow-up, if I may. Would we be able to, because we at least have one school, elementary school that's using it, and I'm not really sure whether or not J.L. Francis is continuing with the practice, but I know that they did have something optional in place for 4 days you wore the light suited uniform, if you will, and on the 5th day it's kind of like a freestyle Friday. Since we already kind of have it intermittently in our district, would the principals be able to opt in such that, and they have this parent committee, and they do all the necessary preparation that they need to, that they would be able to go to the uniform by September?
Now, I would probably have to, how does that qualify, Mrs. Lilly, with regards to, I guess it's kind of, you got a school that's kind of been there, it's been there, that's hard for me to answer legally whether we're going to get deemed or not.
I guess I may not be clear on your question. Are you saying schools that already have it established or who had it established at some point in time, if those principals want to come back on board?
Because we kind of doing it at least, we're doing it, principals, if they have the authority to make that individual choice, have we already bypassed that 1 to 2 year wait, such that if there's a principal and a parent committee who currently want to spend their time over the summer and polling, raising funds to get the light uniforms, would they be allowed to do so such that they could roll it out by September?
I think that individually schools have had their own process following, whether it's this guidance exactly or not, but some form of parent grassroots or what have you, leading up to their ultimate decision to have uniforms. I don't know what that time frame was. So I would suggest for any school that wanted to explore uniforms to take that time to establish and follow the guidelines individually, and to see if there's an appetite at their school for uniforms, whether that be 1 year, 2 years, 6 months. I think that they need to establish, follow the guidelines that are established for each school. Follow the guidelines established at each school that would be wanting to do this, so that they are not necessarily, between now and September, it's a short amount of turnaround time, just logistically, to organize, survey, get the results, process the results, have uniform. Just practically, that would seem to be difficult.
Dr. Jones?
So I just want to make sure I understand the state board. Their recommendation is that each school develop their own rubric or metric for doing the uniform or opting into the uniform thing. In other words, they're saying it's not as successful if the district-wide, there's some kind of movement from, central office on down. It needs to be a groundswell within each separate school, and then each separate school can do it the way they want to do it. There's no uniformity across how they, as long as they adhere to the policies, they can set up their parental involvement the way they want to. Is that the way I'm reading it?
No, the model guidelines speak to developing a uniform policy. And so the model policy or the guidelines here are, whether it be district or whether it be school-based, something that you can follow in order to determine whether or not the school board is going to consider a division-wide policy. I see the individual schools' comments based on what's currently in practice or what has been established in the school division. To date, individual schools have been allowed or granted that authority to poll their own parents. Sometimes the parents have actually initiated the call for uniforms. And so the model, to be clear, the model, the guidelines that the Virginia Board of Education have established would allow the local school board to establish a policy using this information. However, if it is left up to the schools, as it is now, this is the same guidance follows. The critical piece is that parent and community involvement has to be critical in whatever you establish.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And Dr. Jones, it's the second part that I want to piggyback is the financial piece. And for the issue, whatever you do centralized, because of fate, a wearing of a uniform couldn't be a reason for exclusion. And then we're not allowed to budget to do anything to support it. So then if a school has not built capacity, so I want to be clear when I'm saying why they recommend local target school. Because then there's going to be the issue of how do you make sure. So say the district said, we want all of our schools to have a policy where kids have uniforms. The next piece of that is, how do we make sure that everyone can have a uniform, knowing that this body cannot allocate funds for it? Now, that does not preclude the system that they build capacity with some type of partnership. So I won't say you can't figure that out. Right. But at the end of the day, if a kid doesn't have a uniform, you can't say you can't come to school. And at the same time, you don't want to create an environment where a kid feels ostracized because everyone has one and you don't. And Mrs. Taylor's comment is very accurate. In some places, and they have found something that hasn't been, if you don't put right things around it. Because I've been in localities where they've had problems where people turned it into a revenue producer and it got ridiculous. So that's then where, we had to go to another state, though, different laws, contracted agreements, where we set up specific price opportunities for the schools to control that because they were basically making money off our parents and they couldn't afford it. When the goal was, what she talked about was they were trying to give options to reduce some of the parents' costs and kind of simplify everyday getting up, going to school and what you got to wear. So some communities that has worked and helped to do that.
So we have to weigh developing a district-wide stipulation versus allowing it to remain at the behest of a particular school.
Let's pause for a second here. Our student has to leave. Let's acknowledge him with a round of applause.
The answer to your question, Dr. Jones, I wouldn't say wait, you just need to be aware of if you move forward with a district-wide efforts, how do we make sure that we don't create undue hardship unintentionally? And I wasn't here before, but and I don't know how many schools follow this to get Mrs. Epps kind of what made it difficult to answer. Because at the end of the day, this is a non-lawyer comment. People do things until someone challenges them. The reality of it is, so the schools could be doing it, and they may not follow how it was supposed to be done, but if the community is okay with it, then people go along and get along. Now, if we know about it and someone complains, then I got to go back to this document and say, can you show me the parent input? Can you show me the process and those types of things? And say, then technically they're going to win the case of us having to remove it. If force you to go through the process. But if everybody's happy, then you don't have a problem.
Okay, Ms. Lilly had something.
I just wanted to point out in the guidance where you're getting the fact that they emphasize, school by school basis, is that's one of their considerations ultimately, is that the decision to implement a uniform program is most effective when it's made on a school by school basis. And that was as a result of the study that they had conducted of schools that were implementing the uniform system. So, that's one of the considerations that are listed here, as well as some of the others that we've kind of talked about.
Okay, Ms. Larson, followed by Ms. Taylor.
Is the document that Ms. Lilly sent us on board docs? And if not, could we put it up there so that the public, if that's appropriate? Okay. It's just the state guidelines and everything, but I thought it would be important for the public to see it. I philosophically support school uniforms, and I think they're useful in the right situation. However, I think having them come from the school community and having them be driven by the parents, the school leadership, and that being the body that initiates it makes more sense. I think school uniforms are something that everybody has an opinion on, and if we were to move forward with this at our level, it's going to consume a lot of our time, public hearings, a lot of our administrative staff time. And right now where we are as a board and as a school division, I'm a little worried about us taking our eye off of the ball. A couple months ago, we voted on our priorities, and this doesn't fall under that. So if we were going to look at this, I would like to hear from schools that are interested in it and have it be initiated that way rather than starting at the top and moving that direction.
Ms. Taylor?
Thank you. I just want to say that I feel like school uniforms really are a strong support system in leveling the playing field. I mean, we have a policy, a student code of conduct policy that, dress code rather, that we have a hard time or almost impossible time of enforcing. I think that if we're preparing our students to feel good about the work that they're doing, to feel good about the path that they're taking after college, whether it's to have their own business or go to college or whatever it is they decide to do, they need to be able to do that in a professional manner that's going to be conducive to moving them forward in a positive and conducive way. So, for one, I think that it does contribute to their academic performance, which is one of the things that we're focusing on. When you have students that are in the same room that are able to kind of, I wouldn't say look alike, but to me that sends out a message that, we're kind of on an even playing field. That I don't have to look at you and see that you have a certain tennis shoe on or a certain pair of pants that I couldn't afford. I don't want to look at you and feel like that you have whatever it is that you have on that shows that you make more money than, or your family comes from a more privileged environment. So I think that does contribute to how a student is able to perform and how they feel about each other in a classroom setting. That we don't have
30 seconds.
Oh wow. Okay, that we don't have girls who are looking promiscuous or boys who are looking as if they don't care about the environment that they're in. So again, I would like to move forward with the process. In addition, I know that this has been an ongoing conversation, at least for the first year, and that there was a lot of information that was gathered by the previous administration, specifically Ms. Victoria Oakley. If it's possible, can we gather some of that? Can we gather some of that data and forward it to our school principals so that they can have something to make base their decisions on? Because I know a lot of work has gone into that, and that's while she was both on the previous, a part of the previous administration as well as the new administration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Ms. Muhammad?
Thank you. I think serving as being an educator and have served in districts where the school board worked with the local schools to choose a uniform policy or not. So I've been through that process on the other side as an educator. I think it would be most beneficial if we allow the superintendent to work with the associate superintendent, Ms. Kane, and the directors to then ignite a conversation with all of the principals in the district and then move from there without a time frame, because as an educator, that could be almost a 24-month process with the school within itself. So I support school uniforms, and the message is good, but I want to make sure that we support the correct process, the correct methods. Or I don't want to say correct, but the best methods, the best practice methods. So I would suggest if the board chooses to support it, to just kind of tweak what Mrs. Taylor is asking in terms of allowing the cabinet members that directly oversee the schools, that would be our directors and Ms. Kane, to then ignite a conversation to move forward. It is not something that's going to happen in September.
30 seconds.
It's just not going to happen in September. So if it pleases the board, maybe we can go in that direction. I just wanted to offer another alternative other than saying, let's move forward with, because I'm thinking a motion is going to come after that. If so, maybe kind of tweak it a little bit.
Okay. As the chair, one of the things I believe I heard that we have some consensus on would be for the information that we've received to be sent to all of the principals to make sure that they are aware of the information that we are aware of. I think that could be a good outcome of this discussion today. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Larson. Thank you.
I think information sharing is a good thing. I just want it to be clear that I don't want to create any confusion with our building level school leaders, in that this is something that the board is sanctioning or has voted on, has taken action on. Again, I really feel like if uniforms are going to move forward, then it needs to come from the school, from the PTA, from the parents. I'm concerned about starting a process that's going to create more work for our folks and possibly create more confusion and take us away from working on the AIP and all the other initiatives that we're working on this summer.
Okay, at this point, those of you who are still passionate about this, I feel that probably one of the other good things that could come out of this is that we do some work offline to then see what next steps are. As your chair, I will be working with Dr. Fenton. And you all will see it before it goes out. If we, again, to me, the whole piece about making them aware, not giving a mandate, but just making sure all principals are aware that that is an option. Not a mandate, but it is an option that they would need to initiate. So, okay. All right. Madam Clerk.
The next item is 4.03, receive notice on renaming Thompson Middle School.
Dr. Betty and Ms. Lilly, both of you all could. Ms. Lilly could speak to the process of the state
I'm just
requirements.
going to give the old general. Board members, as you know, as part of the merger process, we consulted with DDOE to determine the school number or code that would be of the school and how to go about doing that. In short version of the lengthy conversation back and forth is that neither school actually takes precedent over the other one because they typically go by enrollment of the school, and they almost had an exact enrollment. So that triggered then an option to just basically, for the accountability purposes, also to have a new number designated to the school. Part of when you fill out the paperwork to get a new number, which is what the federal U.S. Department of Education identifies as school by accountability purposes, is obviously you list the name of the school. The second subsequent conversation with DOE had to do with the timeline for doing, for completing that process so that the school would open in time with a appropriate new number. As far as the name, it is the name of whatever we want to call it, and thus triggers our policy process that Ms. Lilly would go over with you all, which is roughly about 30 days and some community meetings, but she'll go in detail. But for me, the administration, we really need to have something in place. I think the meeting is July 18th. Is it a July meeting? That's on the book, whatever the July meeting is. If we follow the timeline that's outlined in the process and Ms. Lilly, July 13th, mentioned, then we would have the paperwork submitted in time to BDOE for their federal accountability. But it's also all of our federal designations. Just recently, I was reminded by our food nutrition services that they need to make sure they have the right school code aligned for the money they receive for food nutrition services. So we get a lot of money from the federal government, so it's important that we meet the timelines to BDOE to get the document turned in. Ms. Lilly can go over the process.
Thank you. The process for naming school facilities or renaming school facilities, which this falls under, is outlined in your school board policy 6-2.9. And it starts with the school board giving notice, public notice of its intention to rename a school during a formal school board meeting. Your policy also states that names of deceased or retired individuals who have made an exceptional or outstanding contribution to Richmond Public Schools may be proposed during the public comment period. And the public comment period of at least 1 month follows this particular notice and will include at least, or should include at least, 2 public hearings where the school facility is located. Names suggested during the public hearings along with the reasons for the recommendation will be recorded at that time. During the public comment period, individuals who desire to submit names for consideration may do so along with the resume of the individuals to be considered and 5 letters of support from a broad range of community members. And at the conclusion of that public comment period, the school board will consider the names of the individuals submitted and vote on the name of the facility, and the school board will have the final discretion. They'll consider the names, of course, but will have the final authority in deciding what the school is named.
Dr. Beck?
Separate from whatever comes from the community administration, will bring forward a fallback option for the board should they not come to some consensus on a name. So we will give you something to make sure we lead with something, but not saying that should be what you should do, but we need to make sure we give you some recommendation from us, Mr. Chairman, so that we can make sure that we hit our timelines, which will also include for Mr. Krantz a short snippet of the history of the names so that you all are aware of how the schools were named and where they came from, how they came about receiving their names, for you all to have that information when you make your decisions. And I can tell you ours would be just a combination name of both schools will come from the administration just to give you a safe option should you not find something you're comfortable with from the community process.
Ms. Epps, followed by Ms. Muhammad.
Now, I'm sure that the public is not aware of this process, so we've got, is it the intention of the public hearings that are scheduled for June 8th for us to give this process to the community. And then we'll come back for a subsequent public hearing to receive their input in all of the appropriate format with all of the necessary attachments.
Well, at this point, there are going to be 2 public hearings, is that, I believe? And so we needed, again, the time just caught up on us, and this was the first meeting where we could present it to you all to now start to advertise for that first public hearing next week. So I'm sure we can develop a package of how it's put out to the public that would also explain the process.
And so how soon will we get that out to the public, knowing we've got a public hearing on Monday the 8th?
Come forward, Candy, please.
While she's coming, Ms. Epps, the other part, that if you go to the meeting and you hear this, you don't have to come back and present publicly to get your stuff considered. You can actually, so just to answer your question about if they just found out that day, I think you're getting at then how do we receive it if they just found out. They will be able to, we will be developing a packet that they can complete also at those meetings that they can turn in for your consideration.
Okay. And you said that notice went out today?
Right, the notice, it was posted in the Times-Dispatch on Friday for the public hearing. Right. And then we also have it posted on the website with the policy. The notice for the public hearing was in the paper on Friday.
Okay, and the policy, I'm sorry?
And the policy with the information is also on our website. We posted it so that if people are interested, they can see when the dates are for the public hearing as well as what to do if they would like to submit a name for consideration.
Would it cause too much heartache for the administration to be very specific about targeting all of the parents, the 6th and 7th grade parents at Elkhart and Thompson, along with those parents of the matriculating 5th graders, so that they can have some input?
We can send the district-wide or just to those schools the automated parent link message. So we can target those schools if you want. We just send it to district-wide, which may be a better net to catch. So we can do that.
Thank you.
And just to let you know, the meetings are going to be held in both communities, both at the Elkhart location on the south side and over here at Thompson.
I thought I understood the location for Elkhart is actually at Southside Plaza?
Southside Plaza, yes.
And I noted on there that the time frame seemed to be very different, was perhaps at an error. It seems like the initial meeting is for 2 hours.
It should be posted for 6 p.m. until
6 p.m. I think one of them is posted for 45 minutes.
The notice for Southside Plaza is 6 to 8. That's Monday, June 8th. Your second public hearing is actually within your board meeting, which is why the time frame was shorter.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Muhammad, followed by Mr. Bourne.
I just have a couple of questions. I would like to encourage us to make certain that the students from both schools have a voice in naming the school. And the reason why I say that is because I was a teacher at John F. Kennedy when Armstrong and Kennedy merged. And I do not want to see a repeat of that process. The students were not, even though they were told they were going to be involved, they were encouraged to submit names. We did that through a homeroom period for about a week or so from both schools. There were forms, of course, but then none of their suggestions were taken seriously, and I do not want to have a repeat of that. I lived that as a teacher. The second thing is maybe we can encourage the schools to encourage the students to have a friendly competition. That is just something that we can think about if we want to have a way of including the students and the parents, because when you make it a friendly competition, they're going to start having a conversation with their caretaker or their parent or whomever at home about what do you think about the naming of the school. Also, does it have to be renamed now? Can it just be the Elkhart Thompson Middle School and then allow the process to continue during the year? Is it a cutoff time frame, Madam Attorney? You know, does it have to be named within 60 days? Do we have to have a new name right now? I think all of those things, I'm not clear on because I'm hearing, you know, yes from certain people, no from other people, you know, so I don't know.
So the actual, I mean, you could very well just still call it Thompson. It's whatever, you don't have to do anything other than turn it in as Thompson as a name. The administration is going to bring you really what you just said, Thompson, Elkhart Thompson, as your fallback if you find nothing. So we were already bringing that generic 2 last name hyphenated version for you all. But yes, we got to have something to trigger that here's this school with this new federal ID number. And then, you know, it will stay there until something happens with building another school. Because the way the policy reads, and I can't remember what she mentioned, is you can't change it. Well, how long was it? 30 years. But obviously, if you build a new school like we're hoping, that would then trigger the whole new name process.
So, I'm sorry, follow up, Dr. Beck. So, if, let's say, I'm throwing this out there as an example. If the school stays Thompson, does it receive a new school code? Because it's keeping the name, Thompson Middle School. I'm asking a question. Will it receive a new school code because of the merger, but the name stays Thompson?
I don't think so.
You don't think it will receive a new? Okay.
I don't think so. I don't know, Janice, if you have a definitive. I don't think so because that name was listed.
Okay.
So, but I mean, but you could
I
do
just
that.
wanted to make sure that
That's why
I asked that question in
yeah.
public and you answered it.
Right. But I'll
because-
verify that, but from my
Right.
preliminary conversations, the whole idea is you have a new school. So if you use an old person's name, it doesn't, I don't think it meets the guidelines that they set me.
Can you all just make sure, Ms. Kane and Ms. Garland, Dr. Benton, that the staff knows that? Because I've had several conversations with teachers there and they believe strongly that they're going to receive a new code if the school remains Thompson. And I told them, I don't think that's true.
I'll ask that direct.
Okay.
I didn't ask it that way, but when you look at the language, it doesn't look like it fulfills the requirements the way it was written.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Muhammad. Mr. Bourne.
Thank you. I have less a question about the process, but more about how we're getting the word out. I understand that we placed a notice in the Times-Dispatch on Friday, and so my question is, have we taken that same notice out, or do we plan to take the same notice out as a free press?
The time frame did not, I didn't have enough time. It had to be a 10-day notice. And I think the free press cut off, if the free press was printed this week, you would not have had your 10-day notice.
And I'm not suggesting that Free Press or the Times-Dispatch, because I think the way the code is written on public notices, it may be written such that the Times-Dispatch is the only paper that quote-unquote qualifies. But I could be wrong, but I don't think that is mutually exclusive of our willingness to take out that same notice in the free press. And I would hope that we would do that because I suspect there are a significant number of people that may read the free press but don't read the Times-Dispatch. So in the event that we have an opportunity to place an ad or the notice in this week's edition, I would hope that we would do so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bourne. Okay, Ms. Evans.
So, follow-up. Are we doing this public hearing, are we hosting these 2 public hearings in the event the community wants to rename the school? I don't now understand why we're doing public hearings right now.
We have to, again, first turn in a name with the document to BDOE. But your local policy asks you to have public input. So the timeline is driven by BDOE's need to get things by a certain time to submit to the federal government. Your policy that you have in place asks for 30 days to allow people to have input into the process. So it is your mechanism, or the board at the time that it came into play, that this is how we hear from our constituents about any suggestions they may have for the name. So what you're doing is trying to hear from others of what is a possible name for this school because of our own local policy. Had we not had the policy that said that, administration, we could have just come to the board and asked you all, you want to have a community meeting or not, or do you just want to make a decision, which could have been, we're just going to use both names, a hybrid, and let you submit the paperwork. But your policy says you must have this communication before and we can't miss the timeline, so that's why you're having it now.
We have to have the communication before we rename it, or
Before you pick a name.
before you pick a name. But this due date that is July to BDOE doesn't necessarily have to have a new name attached.
No, we have to submit it with a name because they're going to send to the feds and ask for a code, but they got to have a name to sign the code to. Every school gets a code associated with its name for accountability purposes and federal allocation purposes. Like TGFs is getting an allocation of money. So we couldn't just say, it has to be a physical institution that they're assigning, money to.
Okay.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
The next item is item 5, board action items. 5.01, receive for action the 2015-2016 salary schedule.
School board members, good evening. The 2015-2016 salary schedule was sent to you on this past Friday in the board document.
Mr. Bourne, followed by Mr. Sterling.
Perhaps Mr. Sterling needs to go first. Do you need a motion to approve this? Okay.
Okay, Mr. Sterling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Phillips, could you talk about how this salary scale differs from the one that is in place now? I think the REA rep mentioned that there was some compression in the salary scales, and that has an impact on current employees and when they will be eligible for step raises.
Okay, what this salary schedule represents is that for the 9.5-month teachers, which are the new 200-day teachers, as well as the 10-month teachers, which are the 24-day teachers, they are seeing an increase of 3 days in their contracts for which they would be paid for. And then the support employees are receiving a 1.5% increase in their pay. So the scale reflects those changes.
Was there a compression, though, in the steps? Because I'm looking at the step scale from 2012. Step 1 was 0 to 6 years, step 2 was 7 to 8 years, step 3 was 9 to 12 years. And the one I'm looking at...
What he's referring to is how we hire people. And the salary compression you're looking at that was a hiring schedule. So in essence, if you had 0 to 6 years and you came in and took a job with RPS, that 0 to 6, you would get placed on that salary schedule on that step. So that has been your salary compression over a number of years. Instead of giving people year-for-year credit when they apply and hired, if you took 0 to 6 and assigned it to a particular step. So if I had 3 years of credit, instead of like the basic concept would have been I put on step 4 when I got hired. What has happened over the years is 0 to 6, you get step whatever, 7 to, I can't remember the other one, you get on step whatever. And that was done, because I brought that question up when I first came, was because you've gone years without, you were not able to give your own employees raises. That was meant to keep other people from far exceeding what the current employees were making. So the salary compression was an issue when you were hiring people to come into the system. Your second part, which was a question you asked, which is a separate issue from salary compression, you asked about step. And each step has a percent in between it. I can't remember what it is, Ralph. But
I mean, I guess the reason I raise it is, and this is what I thought Ms. Hare was referring to in her comments, was under the proposed salary scale that we may vote on tonight, you don't get your first step raise. You don't go up a step until year 10.
And that's true, yes. Again, because of the compression, the way it's been compressed over the years, that's the way that it's happened. And so you're right about that.
But in 2012, you got a raise at year 7. You got a raise at year 9.
no, they're not in their head saying no, with REA also. So that's what I'm saying, I answered the starting, so you're talking about the other one. So you're looking at page 5?
I guess let me cut to the chase. Are there folks who are going to be losing money if we vote to approve this salary scale tonight?
When you say lose money, I'm not sure what you mean by that. No, I mean, everybody's getting a pay increase. Well, the teachers who are on the 9.5 to 10 month scale are going to get an increase in pay of 3 days worth, the equivalent of 1.57%. And everybody else is getting a 1.5% increase on their existing salary. There effectively are no steps and haven't been any steps given for years now. And that's not only true here, it's true in every school division because of the lack of funds that have been available. So people in many places are not, or even if they're moving to the next step, step 3 this year becomes step 4 next year, increased. Step 4 next year is the current year step 3 bumped by 1.5%. So in effect, you may be designated as having arrived at a new step, but that new step is really just the old step bumped by the percentage factor. So you're not getting a step increase plus cost of living. That's what's happening in most places because of the lack of funding. So that's what's meant by the compression. Now, part of this is going to be addressed next year in the compensation study that's going on now with a recommendation on how we get away from this compression and how we fund ourselves out of it over time. It takes a long-term plan. It'll take multiple years to do it because it's very expensive to decompress.
It's great.
So, I know you laid that out, but if I'm an employee, current employee, and I've been here 17 years, has there been a change in my next marker for when I get an increase?
No.
So that's not changed at all?
That's why it's saying this year, this salary schedule would say years of experience 0 to 8 would go to step 3. Now it's saying 0 to 9. So the people who are at the 8th year are not going to the 9th year, they still remain on step 3. That's the compression part of it. So they're getting a pay increase, but they're not moving on the schedule per se. And that's where it's going to take a whole lot of money to correct that over time. And you'll need a plan, a multi-year plan, that you'll, at some point, the board will have to commit to that they want to stick to that plan, because in any year that you decide to do something different, you're basically throwing a monkey wrench in the plan, and it takes it further out into the future when you're going to correct that.
So if I'm in Chesterfield or Henrico, and I've been in the same teaching position for 17 years. I started in the same, relatively the same place as Richmond, and I'm moving up those steps. Am I going to be way behind my counterparts?
No, your salary is still competitive with your peers because it's really effectively been happening everywhere, regardless of how we assign and designate steps. For the most part, whether I've been given a step or not, my salary movement has been on the order of 0% or 1% or 2% over the last 8 years, basically ever since the Great Recession happened and everybody's lost money. So all the salary movement around us has been fairly consistent among all the parties. So if my salary was 8 years ago, 38,000 or 37,000, I'm now at 42,000 or 43,000. It's been a consistent movement regardless of how my steps have been designated. And when we compare ourselves on the salary scale, we're behind Henrico, we're competitive with the others. We're ahead in some steps, and it depends on where you are on that scale too. Some steps are above our competitors, others are below our competitors.
And that's consistent with the administrators and
the application of a raise has been the same. The salary scales are different because all other support staff are not on a step scale. They're on a min-max range. And whatever you're hired in at, that's your salary. And your salary from that point doesn't get administered by steps. It's administered only by cost of living increases.
Dr. Betty?
One of the problems with that in other districts I work in, we did to address your kind of comment about percent raises, the way we give them now. In my last district, we did away with them. We don't apply it to the individual salary. We applied it to the midpoint and gave everybody the same. Because effectively, the higher your salary, a percentage of that becomes a higher dollar value. So you end up stretching out your employees. You know, a 2% on top of a $40,000 salary is a very different than a 2% on the $80,000 pay salary. So we effectively stopped doing it and said we're going to give a 2% on the average salary of the district, for example, or the midpoint, whichever one the district decides. And then you gave everybody that dollar value, it loses everybody equally. But the way we're doing it now,
we're widening the gap.
Yeah, we're widening the gap between the people at the top if they grow faster. And that's, I think, getting to what your concern is, that's how it's not equal. They got equal percent, but the dollar value doesn't stay the same. So some will get higher, more dollars.
Okay. Mr. Bourne.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we adopt the salary schedule as presented.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Great.
I just want to make one quick comment, and I hear you. I do think that we need to, it's hard to say in a budget like this year in the past several years, but we need to work towards leveling this out at some point and getting that salary study done. And so as long as this isn't going to hurt anybody, and that's what you're saying, nobody's going to be harmed with this schedule, I would support it. Does our REA person have input? I just want to know what with the impact. I saw you moving, shaking your head. Okay.
Okay. It's great. It's great. If you want to speak to her offline, but at this point, can't. If you want to go get some input from her.
I just have I want to make sure what we're doing isn't going to harm teachers, and that's how I interpreted the comments, that they could lose money with the salary compression.
Mr. Westman.
We're not doing anything that's different, than what's happened in the past, but we're not making any inroads into changing or improving the salary schedule. Those recommendations come out of the salary study for next year for your consideration for 16-17 implementation. But what we're doing this year is ensuring that everybody gets a pay increase. Yes, the teachers 9.5 to 10 months are working an extra 3 days for their increase, but they're getting 3 days of pay. And you as a board had promised them, that was your one promise, you said you were not going to require them to work those 3 professional days without pay. And so you're delivering on that promise. And at the same time, the state allowed us to use those 3 days towards satisfying the state's requirement for the 1.5% pay increase. And that's the crux of it. We got $1 million in the state toward the payment toward this salary compensation plan. And without that, we couldn't have accomplished it. So it would have cost us $3 million to give a 1.5% raise across the board.
Okay.
But no one's being harmed in the sense that there isn't anybody who isn't getting a raise, and there's nobody that's getting a decrease. Everyone's getting a pay increase, the equivalent pay increase of 1.5% or 1.57% in the case of 9.5 to 10 month teachers.
All right. Sebs.
Mr. Westlake, Mr. Billets, the parity that we're trying to do with our pay scales, that process is ongoing now?
Yes.
And you anticipate it to be complete when?
They're going to give us a draft next week or sometime later this week. At
But-
the beginning part of it, the work will be finished this summer. We've got several more meetings we're going to have collectively with the company that's doing the work.
And so, would it make any sense that if we accepted that in January, we go to that leveling, if you will, with the pay? If we make the pay, we don't have to. Oh, okay. So, but we anticipate then that would probably be a priority in our budget for 17.
Right.
It's going to probably have to be multi-year plans, closing that gap.
Okay.
Ms. Muhammad.
I have a question. Why do we have some teachers that are 11 months because they automatically teach summer school? And I raised this concern before, and I have not received a clear answer as to why that happens. Yes, we do. We have teachers who have shared with me that they were hired on an 11th month contract because they are guaranteed to teach summer school every summer. And I brought this up before, and I never received a resolution to it and I put this in an email because my question is, how can we do that? How can we guarantee that they are selected to teach summer school every summer? So where do they fall on this schedule list? Not only are they 11 months, but they are guaranteed to teach summer school because when they were offered, and I can give names offline and close, because I have several that are like that I know that are like that. So how do we fix that? Like, Shonda comes to Richmond and she's hired to teach math, and I'm guaranteed an 11-month contract because I'm going to teach summer school every summer. That doesn't make sense to me. So can we find that out?
Sure, I can look into that. You can give me those names.
Yes, sir.
I'm not
Absolutely.
aware of that situation.
Okay.
So I would need the specific names, look at their contracts, and then be able to look into that situation. But I am not aware of what you're speaking of.
Okay.
All right. Any more discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Motion was made by Mr. Bourne and seconded by Mrs. Harris Muhammad to approve the 2015-2016 salary schedule. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray? Yes. Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
No, to vote on the motion.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Pinckney Epps?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson? Yes. Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1. The next item is 5.02, receive for action the 2015-2016 re-election list.
Okay, also before you, which was sent to you in Friday's board docs, is the 2015-2016 reappointment list, which recommends those individuals who are recommended for rehire for the 2015-2016 school year.
Can we discuss this in close?
Of course.
Please.
All right. Okay, we'll talk about it in close.
The next item is 5.03, receive for action the grants that are listed in your agenda.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, co-chair, board members, Dr. Bettis. The SUPS memo a couple of weeks ago provided us with the FY16 application for Title I funds. We have looked at that application. We're beginning to work on that application. It is due July 1. We have made projections of what our budget will look like because based on federal projections of the proposed allocations for Virginia and the localities in particular, Richmond Public Schools or Richmond City will receive a 5% decrease in our federal funds for Title I. This will be approximately a $740,000 decrease in funds. This reduction will bring our proposed allocation to approximately $15,068,377. We have received a reduction in funds for the last 3 years. The projected decrease will be addressed through vacancies, phase out of the Middle School Renaissance program that we supported, removal of 2 positions that will transition to the SIG grant, and reduction in funding for tutors and consultants. The Title I budget will be revised to address instructional priorities as a result of the data that we received from the spring 2015 or our current SOL data. We don't have that data available to us right now. We are required to base our application priorities on that data. So we will be getting that data in a couple of weeks, or at least preliminary numbers as to how the students have done on SOL tests. We already are using our data from last year to address the number of schools that we have in improvement and are moving our grant objectives to address those. We don't project that that will change drastically. Specifically, our budget is divided into expenditure categories. Those expenditure categories include personnel costs, and our personnel costs will increase this year because of our increases in salary. And so that will be slightly higher than it was last year, but we have allocated $9.1 million for that. Our employee benefits will also increase slightly. We've allocated $2.2 million for that. Category 3000 includes our purchase services, which would be those services that are acquired from private or independent vendors. That includes some of our instructional supports, such as Achieve 3000, Compass Learning, Explore Learning, and those services that we use from those vendors to support our students and their academic improvement. This we project to be about $800,000. Category 4000 are basically those things that come from internal services or RPS itself. For us, that's primarily transportation, what we provide for students after school. It also includes services such as central purchasing or print shop. The other area of 5,000 area would be mostly indirect costs and local travel. Our indirect cost has increased to 3.3% this year. So last year it was $398,000, so that will exceed $400,000. So most of our cost there is indirect costs, which we pay to the school division for lights, office use, and support services. Category 6,000 would be materials and supplies. Those, of course, as you know, are consumables, all materials that are altered as a result of use. And so those services are, not those services, but those products are things that our schools purchase. And we've allocated $1.5 million for that. Capital outlay would be our capital assets or items over $5,000 individually. For example, our mobile carts or computer workstations. And we've allocated $475,000 for that, for a total allocation of $15,068,377. This amount will change because we will get our actual allocation from the state. We project the end of August because that's when we got it last year. But by September 1, we should have that allocation. Once we receive that allocation, the application will already be at the Department of Education. We'll simply be required to make an amendment so that we reflect the actual budget allocation. Any questions?
Mr. Sterling.
Are I see that some of the savings come from the removal of 2 school improvement positions that are now funded from the SIG. It's a school improvement grant? Is that what that stands for?
Yes, that's what it stands for. Prior to having that grant, we included those positions and funded those positions through Title I.
And so I assume that there are no other positions or programs that we are funding with local dollars that could otherwise be paid for with the SIG money.
I want to be sure I understand the question. Are you suggesting that is there anything else in Title I that can go to SIG?
Can be paid
No.
for by SIG?
No, the majority of the SIG money does go to the LTP partner.
And what is the cost of the savings of phasing out the MSR program?
$265,000.
And this says in parentheses, the tutoring component. So is that the part of MSR that is being phased out, just the tutoring component?
Well, we're going to phase out Middle School Renaissance, and it's becoming MSR 2020. So that'll be a different kind of setup. We have not discussed doing this component with them.
I'm sorry.
We supported the Middle School Renaissance tutoring component, and now that that no longer will exist, that will be a savings for us. That money we will use that money to account for some of the decrease in our funds.
So we're not actively eliminating that. That's already being phased out because MSR 2020 is coming into place.
Yes.
Is that right, Dr. Beth? And I guess here's what I'm getting at is I would be, I think many of us would be willing to go look and find other savings to help pay for MSR programming rather than eliminating that in this budget. At least I would. And so I just want to make sure that I understand what we're looking at here. Are we actively eliminating an MSR programming component, or is it already being phased out because MSR 2020 is taking it over?
Well, it's a little bit of both, and the foundation, which actually helped run and coordinate it, is phasing out of that business also. They're repurposing their focus. Because MSR 2020 is focused on middle schools, the foundation is looking at the other ends of the spectrum, the elementary that we've asked them for, and the new promise opportunities at the high school level. So they're actually also run out of some of the money they had to support it. So it's not just our funding that's going away, it's the grant money that they had that's gone also. And then MRS 2020, and I say it that way because I couldn't tell you the MSR 2020 is able to grow as fast to replace all the programs. And like Higher Achievement wants to expand, and it's one of the about more money for them.
Just to follow up, so if we had that $260,000 or whatever it was, if we had that, and we sent that to MSR, would they be doing tutoring this coming year, or that's something that they were already phasing out anyway?
They're at Henderson now, they're expanding to Booth Hall.
That's 2020. though.
Right.
Yeah.
And MSR is, there are other pieces of pockets of money they don't have also. So that was not their complete budget, if I understand correctly. Because they had more than tutoring, they had sports, all kinds of other stuff. They're the only ones that didn't,
Oh,
we're out of
sure.
middle school.
Yes.
So I don't think that's gonna,
No, we just covered the
tutoring.
teachers
So
who were the tutors.
So their phasing out is bigger than just that component, is what I'm trying to say to you. Because part of the, when I met with Adele, they're actually, a grant is coming to an end too that they have. Now, what would happen if we had 265,000 in MSR 2020? I'd have to ask them. But they already, I expanded to Thompson. It's the latest conversation for higher achievement.
As we looked at how to accommodate $740,000, a critical concern was not to reduce any of our full-time positions, and we have not done that.
Okay, Ms. Evans?
I want to piggyback a little bit off of what Mr. Sturgeon is speaking to. And maybe Dr. Ben, you can clear this up for me. About supplanting. This MSR program, it was appropriate for it to be paid for out of Title I dollars.
The tutoring component was a remediation component of that program, and it was appropriate to be paid for from Title I funds.
And so that's, MSR 2020 has nothing to do with remediation tutoring, does it? It's an after-school extended day program.
Combination.
Yeah, but they do, that's privately raised money from corporations, and they do provide academic supports also.
Okay, so once we take it out of here, can we ever put it back?
Can you ever, well, because we're not spending money, the money that's coming from, are you saying if MRS 2020 is doing their thing, and we decided we wanted to come back, could we? The supplanting issue is what you were doing with your own money within the district, not outside money. You follow what I'm saying?
I think I could.
Think of it as like your procurement process. When external company gives you money like we did for your governance training, you didn't have to do RFPs and all that stuff. You could go pick. It makes it that you're not using taxpayer dollars. When you're using taxpayer dollars, all those regulations come back into play. So money coming from MSR 2020 is privately funded. So the supplanting issue, to my knowledge, wouldn't hit us. Supplanting is about if you are already doing it, you can't now stop doing it and then use their money to do it. So we had to be spending money on it ourselves for it to be supplanting. So if we brought it back right now, if you wanted to bring it back, we could right now, as long as we have not been spending money, and then like we spent general fund money, like he's suggesting, we could not then take their money to use federal money if we wanted to put it back and use it when we were already spending general fund money on it. That would be supplanting. Because Title I money is supposed to be about adding on and supporting, not replacing. So effectively, we did what he's asking. That would then become supplanting if we try to use their money later.
And one final, please. With regard to 1,000, and then I believe somewhere else in here it speaks to parent engagement, but in particular with the parental involvement, this personnel is one sum. What is, do you know the exact amount of this Title I that went towards parental involvement?
We're required to spend 1% of the allocation, and 95% of the 1% must go directly to schools. So this year, we've used our money to fund positions for parent liaison. We budgeted for 4 positions. And we also provide funds directly to schools for them to do parent engagement involvement activities. It's not a lot. It ranges from $3,500 to $4,500 per school.
And I asked this question last year, and I've taken an opportunity to go by some of the schools. It's my understanding that there should at least be a binder at each of the schools where we can show that the parent involvement in these activities are taking place. Have you been able to confirm that the principals, that the schools are at least abiding by those practices?
I'm not aware, based on the guidance in 1118 and 1118, which is the parent involvement compliance section, what they're required to have is a parent involvement policy at the school, and they're required to have to distribute the parent compact. They also are required to address those parent notification letters as those situations exist in their schools. For example, if they have a child who's being taught by a teacher who is not highly qualified for 4 weeks or more, the parent has to be notified. In the beginning of the year, they send notices out to the parents that tell them what their rights are, that they have the right to ask for the qualifications of their child's teacher. But there is no specific binder that ESEA requires or that the DOE requires. They have a Title I compliance folder. And so that includes all of the compliance for Title I. And it's actually a plastic container so that it's more durable.
You can confirm that all of the principals, all the schools are abiding by?
Yes, we were monitored this year. We were monitored in March by the DOE, and we are in compliance.
Did the review kind of find that we didn't have highly certified?
That was the one finding that affects all federal programs, including Title I.
But we are now in compliance with that. You do
No.
have highly certified teachers.
Well, we were just fine out of compliance a couple of months ago, so I doubt if we're in compliance as fast. But we are addressing it. We're going to submit the requirement for the corrective action, and we will have things in place next year to show them that we are working on that compliance.
And I appreciate that, Dr. Scott. Please don't feel as if I'm badgering you.
Oh, I'm not.
How would we have gotten out of compliance if we've been in this Title I?
Okay, I'll tell you. Okay. The highly qualified component of NCLB now, we don't really use the NCLB notification. It's the Elementary Secondary Education Act. So you hear people say ESEA. It requires that all schools must have highly qualified teachers, and that Title I schools in particular will be monitored for compliance. So that is one of the things that was looked for as we looked at the IPAL report, which was our documentation for that particular compliance section.
Which is not, and I think Dr. Scott did say this already, which is not particularly a Title I issue. It is a federal or a title issue in general. Yeah.
Ms. Epson, if you remember, I sent out to the board some steps we're taking because we get the IPAL report, and then I also addressed that there was a document, a reference I made to you all with regards to what I got from the state superintendent about our percent and sections and all those types of things. All of that is about our highly qualified status.
Okay.
And then saying that this is why we've tightened up one on the whole renewal process, why you have the long list you have, that if it's not rectified by June, we just can't keep, we get dinged. And so we're at 95%.
Okay.
But still that's an A, but that's not good enough. The goal is 100%, the requirement is 100%. That's that 95% rate thing we get. So we have the sections, accountability at the principal level, or stop. Just because you tell a teacher, oh, I got this need, to go teach this section, but if their credential doesn't line up to it, they just knock us out of compliance. And so that's why we're tightening up on that, and you may get some phone calls from people, but this is what we get.
Okay. Ms. Taylor, followed by Ms. Gray.
Hello. As it relates to the 5% reduction in funds that equated to the $740,000, what was the rationale for that reduction from the federal government?
Well, actually, Virginia received a slight increase in terms of the allocation, but the allocations for each school district is based on poverty, children in poverty. So our numbers are slightly less than they were in the past.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know, it's hard to believe.
I know, but it's a good thing. And secondly, of the total amount that you received, what was that, 15 million or so? What percentage of that went unused or will be unused?
None.
100% spending?
It will all be spent by September 30th.
Okay.
Yes. We have done, I'm really pleased at the reduction over the years in terms of our carryover dollars.
Excellent. Thank you.
It's great.
I just have a quick request, and that's when those notifications go out to families about not having highly qualified teachers, is there a way to compile that by school and job title so that we can get a report showing where our heavy turnover is and what the areas of need are, so that as a board we can start planning and trying to focus on getting those positions filled?
We work with human resources, and I'm sure that we can.
We have a list of critical needs areas, but when we have that, we can certainly make the board aware.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
One follow-up, please. Those were Ms.
1 minute, 25 seconds.
Okay, Ms. Epps, final follow-up.
Can any of these Title I funds, with regard to parental involvement and engagement, be used towards the purchase of either electronic or equipment for parents? As an example, many of the parents, we have some difficulty reaching out to them because they're transient in their phones, at least. You know, 1 week the phone is on, next week it's not on. Is it possible that any of the Title I allocations could be used to purchase smartphones for those parents that are in Title I school-wide programs?
We would have to look at that very closely because the guidance would say, how does that impact the direct instruction of the child? How is that going to impact student achievement? And we have to justify, is it reasonable and necessary for that item to be purchased for the parent to increase student achievement of the child?
It can't speak directly to their ability to be involved and engaged as a part of that 1% allocation?
I think a question would be, is there not another method that would not require us to purchase that technology? But we can certainly inquire.
Okay. Thank you.
All righty, your final follow-up, Ms. Taylor.
Yeah, this is just a real quickie. Not just realizing that we're 8 months into the year when you gave me the information about spending all the money by September 30th. What were those same statistics for the previous year, 14-15? Did we spend 100% of the money then? And what percentage would you say this year we have spent so much out of the 15 million?
And again, this year we did have slightly over $200,000 carryover, and we are allowed to spend the money by September 30th of the following year. So we are allowed 15% carryover.
Okay. And we were there at that 15% is what you're saying?
We were way under the 15%.
Okay. Can you send me that data?
The amount of the carryover?
Just to break down, that entire window of what was left over or carried over.
Okay.
And what was
We
the
can do
rationale?
that.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion.
I move that we accept the allocation report. Is it something else? Does it name something else?
Title I annual plan.
I move that we accept the Title I annual report. Plan. I move that we accept the Title I annual plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Ms. Harris Muhammad, seconded by Mr. Boone, to approve the Title I annual plan. Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Board members, just a minor interruption before you vote. Item 5.03 also includes Title I Part D, Title II Part A, and Title III Part A from the Grants and Development Office that also needs to be voted on.
So it needs to be included in the
Yes.
motion.
So I have to read all of that.
Yes, please.
I move that we receive for action the Title I annual plan, the Title I Part A, improving basic programs, Title I Part D, prevention and intervention programs for children and youth who are neglected, delinquent, or at risk, Title II Part A, preparing, training, and recruiting high-quality teachers and principals, Title II Part D, Title III Part A, and Title III Part A.
Thank you. The motion was made by Ms. Harris Muhammad, seconded by Ms. Larson. Mr. Sturtevant?
Question, Mr. Coleman.
Hold on, question, Mr. Sterling.
So the document that is on board docs relates to Title I allocations, but what we're voting on is Title II, 3. Do we have a presentation on what we're?
Yes.
Do we know what this is?
Those are carryover grants from last year, so nothing has changed, but if you would like just a brief overview on what they are, we're prepared to provide that to you.
It'd be helpful to get these things in board docs to see exactly what we're voting on, or in the Friday report. But, no, I mean, you can give us an update, but.
Those can be sent to you. It's just a single pager.
Okay.
Okay, you'll get that to the board.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Moved and second.
Mr. Sturtevant?
No.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
No.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Pincknett?
No.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passed 6-3. The next item is to receive for action the resolution and quitclaim deed for surplus in Baker School.
Yes, ma'am. Baker School's been vacant since 2013. Yes, I did. The Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority has approached us about using that property for reinvestment of the community. It doesn't fit within our facilities task force needs, and so we're making the recommendation to surplus it, so eventually that can go over to the Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority.
Mrs. Gray.
I'd like to move that we surplus the Baker Street School and allow Richmond Redevelopment and Housing, the Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority to assume control of that property.
Second. I'm sorry, Ms. Gray, were you done with your motion?
I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure.
I can't chew gum and think of motions at the same time.
Don't say that out loud.
Yes,
I'm trying to plug somebody in.
Okay, make your motion around what it exactly says in 5.04. That's what you do it.
I move that we receive for action the resolution and quitclaim deed for surplusing Baker School.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray? Yes. Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor? Abstained. Mrs. Harris Mohammed?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Pinckney?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1. The next item is to receive for action the contract for energy management program.
Synergistics is a company that's been in business for 28 years. The basis of Synergistic is to focus on the behavioral issues associated in reducing your energy consumption, so that through your behavior changes, that it becomes a permanent change to the way you manage your energy assets. Today, Synergistics, which has been in business for 28 years, has over 1,350 clients operating in 48 states. Synergistics has looked at our billing. They believe that in the course of the first 5.5 years, and it's a 5.5-year contract because it starts off where it's quick start for the first 6 months, that you create your baseline and create your data. Then you go into a 5-year contract. During the course of the 5 years, Synergistics is paid 50% of any savings, and that's to be remembered, it's savings, it's not a fee. The only monies that the district would be coming out of pocket is for their, what they call CAP, which is their energy accounting software system. It's $10,940 for the first 3 years, and then drops to $4,266 for year 4 and 5. What I'm asking for is your approval for the superintendent and or the school board chairman to allow us to continue the negotiations with Synergistics. Once we complete those negotiations, subject to the approval of council and the district's director of purchasing, that they move forward with the execution of that contract.
Ms. Gray.
I have a quick question because we went through this with some link with the facilities task force, and I know there's a state contract that has vendors that were wanting to come in and do some energy efficiency audits. How does this differ from that? And is Synergistics on our state contract?
Synergistics is not. And the difference between, you were thinking of the performance contract. Underneath the performance contract, which there are a number of vendors that the state has approved, those particular companies come in, they evaluate what your needs are from a pure equipment standpoint. They then determine what your savings are, and you repay back those new equipments that come in. So it'll be your HVAC, it's going to be your windows, it's going to be roofs, it's going to be various things. And then you have the savings to pay it back over the course of whatever the period of time. The school system right now is under, we have 3 performance contracts in place. Those contracts have worked well, and that's outside of Synergistics. Synergistics focuses on the behavioral issue. Now, in my conversations that we'll have with Synergistics is making certain, and we've talked already, but making certain that there's no overlap, because you've heard me say on performance contracts, the challenge with them is making sure there's a good baseline. That's the area that calculates your savings. If you don't have everything wrapped up with every I dotted and T crossed on the baseline before you start, that's where you generally run into problems going forward and being able to measure if it's been truly successful or not. Right now, these 2 programs, they are intertwined, but they're not. Synergistics is behavior related. The other contracts are more equipment related.
Mr. Bourne, followed by Mr. Sturdivant.
Thank you. Starting with the behavior versus equipment, does it make sense to do one or the other first? Because as you said that, it struck me that that it might make sense to get the equipment in order and then start to deal with the behavioral things about how we use this.
I kind of thought the same thing, and it's something that we'll be working out with Synergistics to make sure there's no overlap. But in the conversations with Synergistics initially, they said they've worked with this in other districts here in the state of Virginia, London, Prince William. They've done some large, Roanoke County, Loudon, I'm sorry. Loudon, it's been a long day. And I can't even picture the word in my head, so I apologize. They've had those contracts since the 1990s. So I'll have to work that out, and that's why it's not tonight actually approval of the contract. I have some things I need to work out on that side to make sure that we have a good program.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. You've been in conversations with Synergistic, and you've talked to them about this whole program. Are there things that they require of a school division that, in your estimation, are probably not in our best interest? And I understand, I'm asking this question because I understand that we're not approving a contract or anything, but it might, I think it's, if we're not interested, if they have some non-negotiables that just don't work for us, why would we continue to negotiate with them, especially if we have the performance contracting already sort of in place. We've got some people that can help us from that perspective.
That'll be some of the things as I talk to them after tonight to work out, because with everything we've had going on, I've not had as much time to go to spend, and that's my fault with Synergistics. It's not on their end. They've got a sound program. It has proven successful with other districts. Do I have a question or two? Yes. And so I don't want to believe that I'm the first one that's come up with some of these questions. I got to believe some of the other districts have too. I just don't know how they solved that particular issue. A case in point, our energy management system. Okay, the district invested in an energy management system many years ago because of our facility. Okay, and y'all are all aware of our facility. When I'm going to give you an example, when we come out of the cold season and go into the spring, and this is where I don't care if it's a performance contract or whoever. This is an issue on where you got to identify the baselines. We have to keep our dampers open to keep cool air coming in at certain temperatures because our boilers get the rooms too hot. And if we didn't do that, then when they came in to start the school day, it wouldn't be bearable. So we have to kind of balance it out. We don't do that in every one of our buildings, but we have to do that in certain of our buildings. Is that something you can adjust in your baseline? I believe you can. But that's something that I'll work with them. I don't, again, let me say this. I don't think we're different than a lot of other districts in the country, and they're doing 1,350 districts, but that'll be something I'll talk to them about.
Mr. Sturtevant, followed by Ms. Green.
Has Synergistic estimated what savings we might realize? What those numbers look like?
Their estimated savings in the first 5.5 years is savings of $3.9 million to Richmond Public Schools. Over the course of 10 years, because now remember, once you get through that first 5.5 year period, then there's no more payments to Synergistic. Where their program is, where you achieve greater return is through the behavioral changes that they become permanent. So it's not like a piece of equipment that fails. That behavior change, that getting people to understand what it takes. I mean, for example, leaving a computer on is drawing power overnight. Okay? A computer draws it generates about as much heat as a human being does inside a room. So if your system's designed, for example, from 6 o'clock in the evening to 6 o'clock during the day, not to have any heat inside your building, and yet your computer lab is running inside your building, your energy consumption is going to be high. So if you can change that behavior, if you can get people to understand what generates your energy dollars, okay, then as it's proven, then you reduce your energy consumption, you lower your energy dollars. Over the course of 10 years, they believe our net savings to the district would be $13.2 million.
So for that first 3 years, it's $10,400 per year.
Then that's for the energy management system.
And are there other costs beyond that?
Now we pay them 50% of any savings above and beyond that.
Above and beyond what?
Well, above and beyond, we would pay the $10,900, and then any savings above that Any savings that are generated,
Yeah.
okay, are shared 50/50. So we have to generate $22,000 in savings to recoup our investment, approximately.
So if we hit their projected numbers of over 3 years, 3.9 million, you said? So
Over 5 years, they project our share would be $3.9 million.
over 5 years?
Right.
Okay. So half of 3.9, which is?
No. The 3.9 is our half.
Is our half?
It's our half.
Oh.
They actually predict that under the quick start, where they go for 6 months creating their base, that they'll save about $320,000. And now those savings in the first 6 months are not shared with anybody. They stay with the district because their program, they don't start until they start with the performance month, they call it, the first one, which is your first full year of measurement.
And so it sounds very promising, and there's a good return on the investment. I mean, have we done the due diligence to know if, in fact, in other districts they've been able to have the same return on investment?
They are in a district in Florida, right near Okaloosa County, where I came out of Florida, Escambia County. Escambia County is very complimentary of their program. We in Okaloosa County did not pursue it, but we didn't pursue it for a lot of other types of reasons. They have grown. Where they were in 2005 to where they are today is leaps and bounds. They've got, like I said, over 1,350 school systems. That's their specialty. They've expanded it to universities and some other non-profit related type entities. But their focus has been K-12. It has always been K-12 that I know of. And to get to the size they have, they've had to be successful. I don't think some of the systems they have would stay with them unless they really were achieving those goals.
And how long are we locked into is it a year-to-year license?
It's a 5-year contract.
And then,
There's an opt-out clause in it, but there's a calculation that whatever savings that program has generated, they still get that benefit basically, through the term of the contract, which is only fair. I mean, what they don't want to do is in the first 6 months, Synergistics hires, in our case, they're proposing 2 energy managers. That's on their nickel. So all the costs associated with those 2 individuals falls on Synergistics. So what they don't want is they come in, they give you the program, and then, okay, boom, I leave in month 7, and Synergistics has been stuck with that investment. So while it's not a penalty, it is an inducement that you honor the terms of the agreement once you execute.
it's great.
My only heartburn is that if we're doing these in tandem, and we know that changing our mechanical systems out or light fixtures and things, those are things that we can really nail down and enumerate. Behaviors, we can only influence. We can't actually, nail that down to a science. So if we're doing both at the same time, how do we know that we realize savings from what the behavioral stuff is? I mean, if we change out all the computers in a computer lab and they're running off of one, like you did the one server for several different interfaces, that's going to cut down our energy cost if we're upgrading technology, for instance, or if we upgrade a boiler system. How will we know if we're doing them simultaneously? Why don't we nail down the mechanical stuff and all that?
Theoretically, in my conversations with Synergistics, is that, let's say, for example, School A, and our intent is we're going to put a new boiler or an entire new mechanical system into that building. So what they do under their Energy Cap software is that when there's a baseline for today, when we change, that baseline changes to adjust for that new piece of equipment. What I've not had an opportunity is tie that down with their engineers, and that's something that obviously we would do. In theory, what they say, I think is doable, but as you've heard me say about performance contracts, and this isn't nothing against any particular company, the key to the performance contract is is tying in that baseline so that it's clearly definable, the computation, and it's clearly, so you can clearly show what the true savings have been that are generated. Synergistics said that they've encountered this at other districts, so I'm not inventing a problem that they've never seen before. I just need to tie that down with them.
I just think we should, this is just my opinion, but if we're working with upgrading mechanical systems and trying to maximize those efficiencies, it seems like logistically it would make more sense to dovetail that after that has been baselined and not do them simultaneously. So
I understand where you're coming from. I don't think you're wrong, but it does in my conversations with them. They think we can manage it, and I just haven't had a chance to tie that completely down to synergistics. But I think I'd like to have that opportunity to see if we can tie it. If these savings are real, then under a performance contract, like if Company A, and I'm not going to say a name just because I don't want to hinder anybody when we go out with an RFP. If the district didn't put any dollars into the pot, and we did this at a 50,000 foot level, the projection was there was enough savings to pay for $19 million worth of new equipment. That could be windows, that could be HVAC, various pieces of equipment. That's a significant contribution to some of the challenges we have out there. If we can put dollars into it, so take savings here and reinvest it into that program, then obviously the amount of dollars that they're willing to put in, that company, will increase pretty significantly. So I think it behooves us to explore that and maximize it because of our challenges that we do face. But the key will be under both scenarios. So don't let me, it's always the base. The base is the biggest question.
Okay, Ms. Larson.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're asking the school board to do is just give you the authority, along with the board chair, to negotiate it. And you might start the negotiations and say, this isn't going to benefit the school system, so let's hold on.
Right.
Okay, so we're just giving you the authority to work it. It might not work out, and we may move forward on it.
Right.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Ms.
A
Larson?
motion?
I move, this says to execute. So that's what it's asking for, just for clarity. This impact statement says to negotiate and execute on behalf. So I'm fine with the negotiation piece, but if you're asking about executing, I'd like more information before we execute a contract. Sorry to interrupt.
Ms. Grants, what are you asking?
Well, what I was asking for, and I understand what Ms. Gray is saying, the intent here was that there wouldn't be an execution unless that negotiation benefited the school system. And so that's why I requested in the impact statement the ability to negotiate and execute on behalf of the school board. But that was only subject to the negotiations being successful and the superintendent approving ultimately that negotiation was successful.
How much trouble would it be for you to negotiate it and then come back to us?
That's not a problem. I mean, I serve at the pleasure of the superintendent, and if that's the desire of the superintendent and the school board, no problem doing it.
Okay. Let me get a motion.
I move that we allow the superintendent or school board chair to negotiate on behalf of the school board an energy conservation program contract with Synergistic Inc.
Second.
Moved and second. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk.
Motion was made by Ms. Larson, seconded by Mr. Sturtevant, to allow the superintendent to negotiate a contract on behalf of the school board for an energy conservation program. Is that-
Or the chair. Or Ms. Larson said superintendent or the chair.
Okay. So to approve the superintendent or school board chair in consultation with council and district's purchasing department to negotiate on behalf of the school board an energy efficient program contract with Synergistic.
Second.
Mr. Sturtevant, second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, he did.
I have one follow-up question. I know you just asked this session on this. For clarity, does it matter if this, do we anticipate this contract to be $50,000 or more?
The savings will be greater than $50,000
So
or
it's
more.
the savings that will...
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The contract, the cash outlay requirement of the district does not exceed $50,000.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray? Yes. Mr. Bourne?
No.
Ms. Taylor?
Can you come back to me, please?
Ms. Harris Mohammed?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Pinckney Epps?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
I'm going to abstain.
Motion passed, 7 yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstention. The next item is 5.06, and that is to receive budget transfers. Those transfers were provided to you on board docs. And they are for information only. I move that we accept.
So just informational.
Just for information. All right.
All right.
They're small. The next item is 5.07, to receive for action in human resources actions.
Mr. Coleman, can we discuss this in close? I know, I wanted to ask, get it out before.
Yeah. Come on, Mr. Billups, do your thing.
Okay, the human resources actions for approval tonight include the nomination of 1 employee, the change of contract of 8 employees. HR actions for information include the resignation of 72 employees, the retirement of 2 employees, the non-renewal reconstitution Martin Luther King of 4 employees, reduction in force of 13 employees, the non-renewal for performance of 2 employees, the non-renewal other of 5 employees, and the non-renewal licensure of 241 employees.
Okay, as was requested, we have portions of this we need to discuss and close. Thank you, Mr. Billups.
Is this the right motion to go into close?
Yes, one more.
I got a quick question.
Question?
Yeah, I just want to know, was there more than one report that went out for this list that you just spoke to? Was there more than one email that went out regarding, because the one that I have doesn't have all of the information that I'm looking at on the printout. So I was just wondering, was there more than one email or was there a revised version?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Billups. Madam Clerk?
The next item is 5.08, receive for action school board travel and district activity requests. I do have 2 requests. Mrs. Pinckney Epps is requesting to attend the Schools in the Face of Changing Demographics Conference, June 19th at BCU. The registration is $50. She's also requesting to renew membership in the NSBA Black Caucus membership at $75. Her estimated cost is $100. And Mrs. Taylor is also requesting to renew her membership in the VSBA Black Caucus membership for $75. So the estimated total expenditures is $175.
Second. The second one that Ms. Vicky had on for you as well. There were two items that you noted for Ms. Vicky.
I read two for Ms. Pinckney, the Schools in the Face of Changing Demographics Conference.
Correct. Have you seen I would like to.
Could you bring that on the 15th? That's not until the 19th. Colleagues, just to give us, excuse me, Ms. Taylor?
Is there a different cost factor between now and? What is the date of it?
Do you see the date? It's on the 19th. I'm sure they'll take a payment.
I just don't want to have a late call.
I do not see a late cost, Mrs. Taylor.
Okay, well, that's the case, then not a problem.
Okay. All right. Could you repeat the three items, please, so we can move forward? Yes, Ms.
I
Huff.
need to, the item for June 19th, unfortunately, I will be traveling. I will not be able to attend.
Okay, so you want?
So I'll defer my money over to Ms. Taylor.
Okay, so Mrs. Pinckney is requesting to renew her membership in the NSBA Black Caucus for $75, and Ms. Taylor is also requesting to renew her membership in that for $75. And Mrs. Pinckney has removed her request to attend the conference at VCU. So the estimated cost is $150.
She said she's going to take your place.
Okay.
She did the paperwork.
So Ms. Taylor will now like to attend the Schools in the Face of Changing Demographics at VCU. So her estimated cost is $175. I'm sorry.
It's a quick question.
Mr. Muhammad.
But
Actually, since we're going into close, I'm going to mention it in close.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
And I apologize, that estimated cost for those funds is actually $200.
Okay, is there a motion? Moved and second.
What is the motion? Could you just repeat it? Because someone is speaking, but the mics aren't. The motion was made by Dr. Jones, seconded by Mrs. Pinckney Epps, to approve the district activity requests that have been presented. And those changes were Mrs. Pinckney Epps is now removing her request to go to the Schools in the Face of Changing Demographics Conference, and Ms. Taylor is going to go. They're both asking to renew their membership in the Black Caucus, and I did apologize for the error. The estimated cost is $200 and not what's on your sheet. What Black Caucus? VSBA? NSBA? NSBA.
When is the conference at VCU?
June 19th.
Okay. We meet on the 15th.
Right.
Mrs. Taylor, would it be okay if we put it on the 15th agenda so that'll give you time to report on the NSBA conference? And the reason I'm asking that is because there may be some discussion. I want it to pass, but it may not pass because you haven't reported on your last conference. What do you think?
It's not a requirement, so I would be more comfortable moving forward.
Okay.
All right. Moved and second, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne? Mrs. Taylor? Mrs. Harris Mohammed?
Yes.
Dr. Jones? Mrs. Pinckney X?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0. The next item is foreclosed.
Who has the sheet? Read it.
Pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended, I move that the school board of the city of Richmond convene in closed session to discuss prospective candidates for employment and the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining or resignation of specific public officers or employees of the division, including consideration of the human resources agenda of this day and employee matters.
Second. The motion was made by Ms. Harris Mohammed, seconded by Ms. Gray. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are now closed.
Okay, everyone, we do have some extensive items to close, so if we could move swiftly, we're using the conference room across the hall, forward.